Welcome back to the series where you get to watch me try to build a startup. And while I'm building out a new user flow for our idea, what I want to do is really give you a walkthrough of how I use Figma, the process that I go through for building new screens, and just some of the things that I look out for to ensure that you end up with a really high quality MVP at the end of the day. So if you're someone that struggles during that phase of actually turning your vision into reality, I think this video can help you out a lot. And towards the end, I'll show you how you can turn your Figma designs into a clickable prototype so that you can get it in front of your customers and start getting feedback as quickly as possible. All right, let's get into it. Okay, so you can see I've got a bit of a layout going already, but this is specifically for the student or just the member side of our platform. And our platform is really a two-sided marketplace. You can have the coach that runs a specific group, and then the coach will have members within that group. So far, we're building out the member side, but what I wanted to show you was essentially building out the coach side, which will give you an insight into how you can build out a page from pretty much nothing. What I'm gonna first do, I'm gonna go in here, I'm gonna rename this to web app member, and then I'm gonna create a new page. This page will be for the coach side. So when I'm starting out, I just start with a basic template, press A to pull up the frame option, and then I'm gonna go with a MacBook Pro 16-inch. And it's important to pick one of these templates when starting, because this will lead into how you actually create your prototype. You'll see over here when I wanna have a prototype, I can set my start point. And this is going to also dictate the specific way that you see the prototype when interacting with it. But I'll get a bit more into that later. For now, we're just gonna focus on building out this page. The first thing that I do is just use a kind of column layout to help me understand how I can break apart the sections of this specific page. So I've already got a template saved for a specific grid. So I can come in here, select layout grid, and paste that on. You can see here, this will give me a kind of visual representation of how I can start to structure sections of this page out. You'll see the space here, and this is just specific because I wanted to have space for a left-hand nav bar. And I'll show just in a minute how you can build out some of these components. But for now, you can see I have a few different components here. I have a nav page, and specifically what I'm looking for is my side nav. So I'll go ahead and just pull that in, get that lined up, and now I can get a sense of what my nav looks like for this specific page, and you can see how the grid can now flow nicely within that. I'll shrink this down a bit just so that it looks good on our prototype, and that gives me a very basic starting point. So now you can toggle it on and off and just see the white space that's gonna go into this page. Now, before I continue, what I want to dive into a bit more is an actual design system. For any large scale software platform that you're gonna be building, it's really important to build out a design system which will allow you to have reusability and just consistency within your actual site that you're building. You'll see here, I've already got this started. It's really basic though at the moment. I have some swatches for colors, and that's pretty much it. I have some buttons as well, but those are more component based. And what I want to do is show kind of how you can use this to build out typography as well, just as an example for the parts of a design system. What I'll do is I'll go ahead and just create another box here, and I'll start throwing some text on here. We'll say my heading 1, and just go down the list. Now, when building out the actual sizes that I want for my typefaces, there's a specific pattern that you can use for this. So I'm just gonna pull this over to show where you can go to view essentially your type scale for how large to make certain text or certain headings for your actual site. So there's different scales that you can use. This is the minor third, and you can kind of play with a few different ones. You can pick whatever you want. I'm just gonna go with major third for this one. And then I can go over here and see the pixel values for if I started at 16 pixels as my base, how large my typefaces will be. And I'm just going to round these out. So H1 will be 61, H2 roughly 48. Just going to keep it at even numbers. So I'll actually make this 60. And again, this is just a baseline to use, and then as you continue, you can just modify this as you see fit. So I'll go with 38 for H3, 4 will be 30. I'll add in a few more. So we'll go down to 25. I'm just adding in body text as well. And we'll do an extra small actually as just 11. All right. Now for font size or font weights, I'm just going to go with regular for my body text. And then I want something that really stands out for my headings, my main headings, which will be bold. And then I think I'll do semi-bold for these. Okay, so that gives me a type system to work with. All right, so now I'm just gonna break these apart so that I can specifically see my text versus headings, and then create some auto layouts. Now that I've got my headings and my body text for sizes complete, I'll go ahead and create variables so that I can reuse these just throughout my application. So I'll go ahead and just start creating some new text styles. This one's going to be heading 1, and I'll just go H1 as the shorthand, and I'll go through and create that for each specific heading. Now that I've got my headings and my text set up, you can see how this can start to build out a design system for yourself so that you can really just promote reusability, sizes, all of that good stuff that goes into a complete software product. Hey, so I wanted to share that I started a newsletter. If you're a SaaS founder or thinking about starting your own SaaS business, then I really encourage you to join. I'll be sharing some more exclusive content as I continue down this journey, all with the sole purpose of helping you succeed faster with your own business. You can click the link in the description below to join. All right, let's get back to designing. Now back on the coach side, what I'll do is actually list out the key actions that I want them to be able to do from their dashboard. So just before actually designing, we'll create this bullet list just to know the key actions that will go into the dashboard. All right, with this list, what I want to do is essentially start creating a hierarchy of these actions themselves. I think the most important would be an overview of their member status. So I'm going to just move these around to prioritize them. And then afterwards, I think they would want to know, outside of just how their members are doing, any recent activity, so view notifications and any logs that might come through the system for specifying certain actions students or members might be taking. I could see an action item after that for actually creating a new message, going next, and then a Q&A section. What this really would be, in my mind, could be just a way for a coach to quickly see, hey, what are people talking about? Did anyone ask me a direct question? And a quick, easy way for them to respond to it there. And then some coach-specific tooling. This is kind of just off the top of my head for now, but we did talk about, myself and my co-founder, about a resource center for coaches to be able to distribute resources to their students. I could see this being something that they also take action for on their dashboard. But I think this is a good list for now. And what I want to do now is just start thinking in large blocks of this dashboard, how I could envision this page looking. And I think a really key part of this, and it's something that I do frequently, is just looking at essentially some inspiration for what this might look like. You can see here I have another page called an inspiration board, mainly around the student side. So I think what I'll do is go ahead and create another inspiration board just for the coach side and some of the things that they might want to see. All right, I've now gone ahead and added a few new kind of just dashboards that I think are more relevant for the coach side. Now you can see each of these inspiration points vary in terms of their product application, but I think that's what's important, is to just look at various industries, various products, and start to pull together pieces that you might like about certain ones. So for example, this one, I just really liked kind of this graph going on here that I think could relate towards just trends of goals completed and stuff for the coach to review. This one, again, has just really nice cards that can convey certain action points for the coach. I also really like this activity section, so something to think about there. And over here, I could see this more on the table for listing each member in a row with just their current status, the last time they logged in maybe, just important information that a coach might want to know about each of their members in their group. And then again over here, this was pretty interesting as well with these cards. And then this weekly activity kind of ties into the next one over here of just seeing what you have upcoming for meetings or just chats going on within your mastermind groups. Yeah, and I think this is something else to really think about. This, as I was looking at these, I noticed like, oh, I think this could be a really valuable feature of just seeing what's upcoming for your specific group as a coach. And I didn't really list that in the feature set over here. I had an overview of member status and activity, but I think what I want to do is an overview of what's coming up. I think that would be a really important piece, and just part of this process is it's very iterative. You might start somewhere and then you'll realize that there's other parts that you actually want within the platform, and it's totally fine. That's honestly part of the fun. The things that you end up with aren't actually going to be always what you started with, but you have to start and just start building things to get to something that you really like. So with these actions, I can start to lay out my actual page here. You want to think in large blocks for this part, and these blocks now kind of have a hierarchy based on what we just listed for our feature set here. Overview of member status, I think, is one of the most key things. I think to start for that, we'll have some cards listed right across the top. Maybe pull in a 3-column layout, just showing various statuses. And this is just starting with almost like a lo-fi wireframe, just to get an idea of the layout of the page. Next up is overview of what's coming up, and I really liked that right-hand sidebar I saw in this design here. So I'm gonna mimic that, where that's gonna be kind of the main activity section of this. This is gonna be another block that will pull down just like this. Now, after that, we have viewing notifications, and I kind of saw within this page again that had this notification symbol. I like that, but this also has one interesting as well, that it could be just a nice way to lump activity and status together. Let's actually go that route. So I think we'll have a header and then a notification and maybe even a search like I saw in that design. So search might go here, notifications. And that kind of ties together the idea of searching activity with also being able to view your notifications in an easy spot. But again, as you go through this process, you might think, oh, I want to change this up or just move things around. That's totally part of this process and something that I definitely encourage. Okay, I've completed what I kind of see for this coach dashboard just in lo-fi wireframes. And just to go over how I thought through this was essentially we have our member status as number one, and I think that can come through here with just knowing the overview of the things that the coach's members have completed, incomplete, what's ongoing. And then I could see a list of the members here in table format that pretty much just gives them an overview at an individual level of how each person is doing in the group. With some action items as well, I could see like the ability to DM, call, schedule, just things like that right from within this member row. And then from there, the view notification / activity, and also what's coming up I saw in this right-hand sidebar. So I did end up moving things around where I think notifications and upcoming activity make more sense together than how I initially was thinking about it here. Notifications, this would just be a profile link, and then upcoming meetings in a calendar format. And then I also saw like actions from this. So this is kind of a spin-off of the Q&A section that I mentioned here, where instead it's like, hey, here's the actions that people have taken, almost like the activity of what you should look into as a coach that your members are doing. So I think that can be another really key aspect of the dashboard. And then moving down further down the hierarchy, I think latest messages, this fits into just the message section. I think create a message is part of it. I'll put a small just call out here for a create message button. And then below that, you'll see as a coach just the latest activity for the different messages that members within the group would be having. So that wraps up the dashboard itself in terms of a lo-fi wireframe. And now I'm just gonna go through and really just kind of play with how I can make this into a solid visual and really put that polish on it with the final design. I'm gonna dive into that, and then I'll kind of explain as I go for just certain aspects that I think about in terms of just how to space things, the different sizes to use for the typography, when to use icons, and all of that good stuff. Let's dive into it. And one of the first things I want to talk about is actually creating components for reusable blocks. And just to start with, I can see here, each of these cards are close enough to be considered, I would say, a component. And what that means is I'm going to actually pull this out and create this as an individual component on the side. And then I can use this component in a reusable way to build out all of the cards that will go on this dashboard. What this allows me to do is then pretty much just only have to edit things in one spot in the future, and then it'll put those changes through every other component that uses this master component. Really good way to enforce consistency and just make your life easier as you're designing more complex interfaces. Okay, here's my initial idea for the dashboard card. And now what I can do is just pull this over and replace this as my specific UI element within this section of the page. And just modify these to how I see fit. But they actually follow the same layout structure that I outlined in the master component. I'll be able to see how changes can reflect between just each component on the screen here. So you'll see, for example, this kind of text is just out or hanging off. I don't necessarily want that. I want it to go full width, so I'll just expand this out. And just like that, you can see this expand across. And then I still have the ability to change colors in here, so I might make this yellow or orange, and then ongoing another color as well. We'll just do gray to start. And I can even change out the icons as well. Now what I can also do that really helps with consistency is auto layout. And to accomplish that, I've used it a few times already, but I can just select the elements that I want to be laid out together and go ahead and click auto layout. And this will just align things nicely for me. And I can even just start adding in additional items, like let's say I duplicate this card, and I can see how it might change my layout here. I could wrap these and then specify a specific width, and you'll see these wrapped nicely to the line below. And I can move them around, all that stuff. Auto layout's a really powerful tool, a great way to build really clean interfaces as you're building them out. I hope that gives you an idea for how you can use Figma to build out screens for your MVP of your startup. And what I'm going to do now is just work on designing the rest of this specific dashboard page. And afterwards, I'll talk about some of the decisions that went into the rest of the components on this page. And lastly, I'll actually show how I can turn this into a specific clickable prototype, which you can then share with anyone and start to use feedback on the actual page that you built. All right, I just wanted to give you an idea of just how long this process can take to actually design out a page. I started this around 6 p.m. or so, and it's now almost 9 p.m. just building out the actual visual part where I left off. So you can see here, there's a lot to do still. I'm really focused in on this part of the dashboard so far. I really like how it's turning out, but yeah, it takes a while. And yeah, you can see here, just about 9 p.m. So yeah, I'm getting a little tired at this point. I'm gonna wrap up finishing this page tomorrow, but I just wanted to give you a quick glimpse at just how long it can take to do this, but it can really pay off. I think paying attention to these minute details when building out the visual can really help just elevate the actual product that you're launching. So until then, I'll see you tomorrow. Okay, it's a new day, feeling pretty refreshed at this point, and had a chance to spend a few hours this morning designing out the rest of my coach dashboard that I was working on last night. Really excited with how this turned out, so let's dive into the completed page. So yeah, here's that dashboard now that I've been able to spend a few more hours this morning actually completing the rest of the visual. You can see it looks a little bit different than the initial layout that I had from last night. I wasn't really in love with it, and like I mentioned, part of this process is just iterating as you go. So I ended up coming up with a bit of a different design here where I wanted to have the cards on the right-hand side just to show the task completion rates and stuff. And then I started to think about this day at a glance card that could pull in some usage of AI to essentially give the coach at a glance, here's some of your top action items to do for your group. And you can see here, these are potentially based off of just statuses of the coach's members and things like that. What I wanted to show was just how I actually decided to build out this page. You can see this is the completed page, but if I come over here, there's a lot of small components that actually come together to create the rest of the page. And I think this is a really good way to actually enforce consistency in your application, is just to think of things in this component base and then assemble your components to complete your page. And another bonus of this is that everything becomes very easy to maintain. So for example, I didn't really love this bullet point that I had in the kind of day at a glance view. Instead of going in here or having to modify each one, I can come to the root component up here and just select the ellipse I had here and delete it. And now that kind of takes care of that each instance of that specific component. And I personally just like this better, a small change. But you can see how this can have ripple effects across all of the instances of each component. Componentizing things is really a solid thing to do. The other part is auto layout. So you'll see if I click through things, everything is pretty much using an auto layout. And auto layout is essentially a really awesome way to have your designs mimic real world code and just how you would envision them working. For example here, if I wanted to add a new field in, all I have to do is just copy this field over, and it's gonna move everything to match the spacing that I set up for this specific auto layout, which is really just like align things with the space, available space in between them. And again, since we're using a component, I'm just modifying this one instance, and I can see how it can ripple through every single instance of that component and really just give me a quick and easy way to be able to modify things. The other aspect of components that I wanted to show here was variants. So you'll see here, this is another component, but each of these components are actually variants of a master component. Variants, as you can see here, I have this property, and if I double click on the layer here, I can see what this property, specifically the property and the value is, allows me to have the ability to customize the specific options that a component might have. In this case, it's just a badge, success warning, error. And what that looks like is over here where I'm trying to just show a variety of the things that might be able to render for a component type. I now have this variant right here, and all I have to do is just change this between the different styles, and I can see what that might look like. And it's really nice because it's just a drop down and lets me just try out, different variants of components and see them in action in my UI. All right, and what I wanted to also do is just give an overview of this actual dashboard, its intentions, and kind of why I chose to lay this out in this specific way. The initial part, just if we go back to our hierarchy, I said like overview of a member status and what's coming up is the most important thing for a coach. We get that in this very top section. That's where most of the emphasis goes, where they can see an overview of, hey, these are just at a glance the things that they should put most of their importance towards. And then they get an overview of just how their group is tracking towards everything that they've set up for their goals for the week. The other half that I think is important with this is just knowing what's coming up, and then also leading into viewing notifications on activity. So there is that from design inspiration that I had found pretty much over here in this section, as well as this section of various dashboards. I really liked how that conveyed upcoming events and activity. And that's what I wanted to dedicate this right-hand sidebar to, where they can get an overview of, okay, this is the date today. Here are my meetings scheduled with the members of my group. And then here are some of the things that my group has done in terms of latest activity. So we can see someone completed a task, and then someone posted a message in a specific thread that they might want to reply to. Going further down the hierarchy, we have some information about the members of the group, giving them just more in detail at an individual level what they might want to know about each member. We get some contact information. This is what I'm thinking could be like where it says yesterday for showing like the last time they logged in or last time they completed something. And then just a quick overview of like, hey, are they on track, at risk, or have they completed all of their goals for the week? And then some action items. They could either DM this member directly, or maybe schedule something like scheduling a call or a video chat or something like that. And you can't see it in this view because this is leading into kind of how you build the prototype, but I have latest messages, which kind of follows a similar Slack style where I think messages, I haven't built this screen out yet, but messages will kind of function just like Slack channels, and just copying the activity log of these messages is what I'm kind of going for here, where they can get a sense of just throughout the messaging of the application, what should they respond to, what's going on, all of that type of stuff. And then the very last thing is coach-specific tooling, specifically a resource center. And that's where this little icon comes in at the top, lets them just direct link into their resource center. And next to it is kind of just a global search. I'm not sure exactly how this is going to function yet, but I envision the ability to just type in anything and then get results back. Probably using AI again to just really give like domain-specific knowledge about the platform and the resources they have within their specific instance of the platform. Now what I want to do for you is actually show how you can turn this into a clickable prototype so that you can start sharing it with your customers and get some feedback on the design itself. The first thing that I want to do for just adding interactivity to this prototype is allowing the user to scroll the sections that they kind of envision that they can scroll. And what I mean by that is you can see here I have latest messages cut off at the bottom, and a user would expect that they could scroll this page and really get a feel for how I can view content that is overflowing my kind of computer height. So in order to do that, there's a couple things. And the first thing is that I envision this sidebar as well as this sidebar over here to not actually scroll. I want these to be stuck in position. That's pretty easy to do. I'm just going to come over here and change position to sticky. And then the next thing that I can do is take the rest of the document and specify that I want vertical scrolling. And what that's going to do is just allow, if there is content that is overflowing the document or the artboard itself, it's going to let you scroll in a prototype. Let's go ahead and check this out now. I'll go ahead and start my flow, and this hot reloaded, and you can see there's kind of an issue with just that one button. It wasn't grouped together, but I get a sense of how the rest of the page can scroll. So let me just come back over here and fix that one button. This was just not in the group that it should be in. So let's put that in there. Now if we come back, much better. So this is essentially showing scroll behavior for my prototype with a little bit of extra functionality to lock a specific component in a position that I want it to be in. Now the next thing I want to show is how you can use overlays for certain actions that a user might take. I'm just going to show a really easy example for this, but this is something that you can do for pretty much any scenario that you have, like popovers or just interactivity from certain buttons. So I have this artboard, and what I really want to do is just, when I click this button, I want to be able to open that as a popover just below the actual button itself. To do that, the first thing I'm going to do is click into the button and then drag over a connector so that I have an interactivity tied to this action. And you can see this is a click action over here, which is what I want. And you can hover this section to get an idea of how it animates. I don't necessarily want that type of animation. I'd rather have it just dissolve in like that. And this is also not going to be a navigate. I'm going to come down here and open an overlay. So now I can see this is how it's going to animate in, but I don't also want it to be centered. I'll go ahead and show what that looks like real quick, where I'll come over to my prototype and click the button. Now I see that artboard show up in the middle of the page. Not really what I'm expecting. Let's come back over here, click this interaction, and I'm going to come to the drop down and select manual. Now you'll see something happen here. You'll actually see an overlay of this exact component. And I can just move this to however I want. So I'm going to want this to pop up just like that. And the next thing I'm going to do, just to make sure that you can see this, is change or add in a drop shadow so that we can see this component on top of it, and we'll give it a little bit of a border. All right, this is my completed on click. We can see this item that's going to pop in right here, just below it. And then other things that I like to do is just enable clicking when outside to close the actual overlay itself. All right, we'll come back over here, and if I click here, now I can see my overlay pop up. And you can really start to see the power of the prototyping tools with dashboards so that I can really add in a lot of functionality here. And the nice thing too is with these prototypes, if you click anywhere that isn't a place that you can do an action, it'll pop this little hotspot. So that's where you see that blue. That's essentially showing, hey, if you click this, something's going to happen. And the great part about this is if I want to share this, all I have to do is just come over here, change up my sharing settings, and I can say anyone, only invited, or anyone. I can specify a password, save it, and now anyone with this link will be able to view this prototype. So I can share it with my customers, I can use this during interviews. They can load up this without even needing Figma, which is great. They can just do it straight in their browser and test this out, and I can get some great feedback on how my prototype is doing in the eyes of the user. Another lesson that I kind of reminded myself of while I was working the past few days on this was just the importance of, like, if you're feeling stuck, just take a break. And, you know, if you're tired or just not really feeling it at the very moment, spend some time, like, rest, go on a walk, just reset yourself, because when you come back, you'll actually feel much better. That's kind of what had happened here. I was working late Sunday night on this and just was kind of feeling a little stuck on how I wanted to build out the page. Instead of really just like continuing trying to build this and forcing myself to get it done, I decided, you know what, I'm gonna take a break. I'll revisit this in the morning. And honestly, I feel so much better about how this specific page turned out. And it was, yeah, just a reminder that, like, if you're really trying to get something done, sometimes it doesn't make sense to just keep forcing yourself to do the work. Just take a break and come back to it, and you can usually end up with much better results. I hope you enjoyed this bit of a deep dive into Figma. Let me know down in the comments if you want to see any additional things in terms of just the design phase of building out a startup. Also, make sure you subscribe to my new newsletter if you want to get some additional just behind the scenes insights into this process, and just a way so that we can connect and you can share some of the things that you're working on. Until next time, peace out.